and you move on to kind of the next most influential, most significant thing that you kind of did as a team, but you easily show the other stuff.
In that regard, like when we present the best of or whatever, I mean, it's obvious that if it's something on the front suspension or something that person or whoever had done it is what did it. But should we be putting like a little name, or should everything be presented as if it was done by the team?
So I would give credit where credit's due, unless the best is always the same name. Then it calls into question kind of the rest of the team. So you have to kind of work that out. But I would personally give credit where credit's due. You know, and I'm not sure that I would take the time to say, and Joe did this. I would just have that little note underneath there as to who did it. Okay. Other questions? Okay, let's talk about the exam. There's going to be 5 questions. There will be a curve or surface question as hopefully kind of a redeeming effort.
So similar to the curve and surface question.
Similar to the curve and surface on the midterm. That is a required question by everyone, okay? And you'll find out what that means here in just a second with the help of Holt. The other 4 questions will deal with the topics covered since the midterm. So I think there's FEA, there's motion, mass properties, and CFD. I think are the, I hope I remembered that right. Yes?
So there's no like visualization.
Oh, I take that back. I combined FEA and CFD into a single question. And so there is a visualization. Thank you, Philip. Those questions are going to be more kind of process or methodology type questions, not mathematical.
All of them?
Well, not the first one.
Yeah, it's like, I should do the first one.
Not the first one. First one will be a math kind of question. But the other 4 will be kind of, tell me what you know about it. Tell me how this is done. Okay. Question?
So sort of similar to like the pathology application.
Yeah, so if there is math, it's fairly basic, but you need to kind of talk about how that math can be used or applied or what. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Spoken about open note like last time, or
Open and hard.
Open professor.
Open Jesus.
done.
It's going to be open whatever, but I wouldn't.
It's just the time constraint.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too hung up on saying, "Oh, I'm going to have plenty of time." Dr. Jensen never gives plenty of time. You should know that by now. So you should be able to just write and tell me what's in your mind, what you walked away, or what you will be walking away from this class with. Okay, so we sent out an email. Holt, come forward. We sent out an email to the, what's your acronym? PGVT.
It's supposed to Global Virtual Teams.
What? So we sent out an email to half of the class, roughly.
About 31 students.
And we said that if you supported Holt in his research in doing the lessons and, what are we calling those, quizzes, homeworks?
Well, maybe to explain, there's 3 groups in the research. One is the co-located team, and then there's the other large group of global virtual teams. Half of those took the Principles of Global Virtual Teams lessons, half of them didn't. So it lets us assess that. Those that took the Global Virtual Teams lessons, they required a minimum of about extra 10 hours of work that those that weren't in that group had to do. So that in this course, that represents a substantial amount of time.
And it was obvious that the students were resisting that extra commitment. And so we dangled a carrot in that you could, if you were in that group, you could choose to eliminate 2 of the questions on the final exam. And that is still the case. If you completed 80%,
80%, 8, 9, or 10 of the lessons.
so if you don't know whether you completed 8, 9, or 10, we do have a list. And we can tell you that. If you didn't complete 8, 9, or 10 of the lessons, and you were in that group, you will need to do the entire test. If you did not, or if you did complete it, then you will be able to choose 2 of the 4 questions to not answer. Okay. And you will need to still do the math exam. Now, to make that fair, okay, I've thought of a slightly different twist. So, as I thought about that and reflected on it, if I had 50 minutes to write 3 questions, could I potentially write those 3 questions better than somebody that had to write on all 5? And the answer is yes. And so those that are taking 3/5 of the test will have 3/5 of the time. Right? I think that is very fair. Okay? I did not send that out in the email to you, so if you're on this PGVT team, you can throw rocks at me now. But to be fair to your classmates, that only makes sense. So if you're doing 3 problems, you will have 3/5 of the time. If you are doing the whole test, you'll have the whole time. And each problem on the exam is equally weighted. Okay? Each problem on the exam is equally weighted.
You said they're equally weighted, but what about the math problem versus the written problem at the same time? Like the math problem is going to take the same time as the written ones.
For me, it does. I don't know that that's the answer that you wanted, but I am trying to size it so that it would take an equal amount of time to the other things. So I appreciate the concern, but I tried to work that out. Question?
If we did the PGVT, do we have to just do 3, or can we do the whole test all the time?
Sure. You could elect to do the whole thing if you want to do the whole thing. I'm not forcing you to take 3/5 of the test. So that's.
I would trade you 3 questions for my
And I'll even give you my Visa card number. No. Any other questions? Yes.
Do we get full credit for the PGVT questions? Do we get full credit for PGVT questions? For completing PGVT, do we get full credit?
So I haven't quite figured that out. Some have taken 10, some have taken 9, some have taken 8. And so I still need to huddle up with Holt before I can answer that in a reasonable way.
But
It's a good question.
How much percentage you give, right? Like you get some wrong, you won't be getting the full credit, or how it works?
Like on the quiz, it's not like.
Yeah.
On each of the tests, the way I kept track of whether you completed the test or not, at the end of each lesson was a quiz. And if you completed that quiz, and then I gave you credit for it, okay? I didn't look and said, okay, I'm going to scale this that you've got 70% or 80% on it, because this is the initial run through it. And those of you that were in there was a number of you that we actually called for interviews to evaluate on it to try and improve local lessons in the instrument. So it's what we call a good faith effort. Obviously, if you look at probabilities and we go through and you've got 25% on the test questions, that's an indication that you just kind of randomly guessed when it was multiple choice with 4 answers. But if we can see that there's a good faith effort, I'm not going to quibble about if you got 70 or 80 or whatever on it. It's just that you got them done. Okay.
Other questions? Yes.
One other question is, so will the scores be weighted against each other? Those that only can screen is 5.
I will look at trying to put them together, but if it messes up the curve, I won't put them together. So I will look at it both ways, because there is a risk that it messes with it more than it should, and I won't allow that to happen. So, other questions? So, what do you need to be thinking about in the 2 minutes that are left before we come back on Thursday about this math problem? What do you need to remember about Bézier's? Beyond that, you have to remember that the beginning point and the ending point are interpolated by the curve. What else do you have to remember? That the first point on the control net and the second point on the control net do what? Define the tangency at the beginning of the curve. And what about the last point and the second to last point?
Same thing.
Tangency at the end. Okay? Do we know anything else about Bézier beyond that little discussion right there?
No. Just kidding.
That's all we know. I'll simplify the question.
Sounds good.
We know the basics of how to do it.
It's ugly math. Okay? So what do we need to know about a surface?
It's two Bézier curves.
The 4 corner points of the surface are interpolated. Okay? So there is a U0, V0 that's on the curve. There's a U0, V1 that's on the curve. There is a 0, 1 that's 1, 0 that's on the curve, and a 1, 1 that's on the curve. And what do we know about the points coming off of those corners? They give the tangency in the U direction, tangency in the V direction, at all of those corners. Do we care about any of the other stuff that's in the middle of that? We do, but it's hard to define, it's hard to work out and everything. So if you can kind of remember those things and then think about how to set up a matrix equation, it's not going to be much tougher than that. It's a redeeming. It's not a
Punish you a second time.
It's not a punish you a second time. I'm hoping it's not a punish you a second time. I'm hoping it's a redeeming question.
Is there any way we can get the solutions for the last test to help us study for this one?
How did I go over that? I went over it on a PDF or something, didn't I? Yeah, you should.
I think so.
So I should be able to post that.
Okay, that'd be great.
I can get it to you.
Thanks.
All right. In that regard.